Lars Rasmussen. I'm an angel investor here in Athens, although I'm best known for helping to start Google Maps almost 20 years ago. Well, I'm married to a Greek goddess. That's my ticket to this beautiful country. But we've long wanted to come live here and see if we could find some cool investment opportunities here and help the ecosystem grow. I have to be honest, when my wife and I moved here from New York 3 years ago, we didn't expect to find a lot because we looked at Greece during the financial crisis, 2012 or so, and there was so little going on here, people were so depressed. We came back just 8 years later and were blown away with how quickly an ecosystem of startups had grown from nothing, really. Hundreds of startups, the first unicorns were starting to emerge, 10 local VCs active in the market, foreign VCs starting to really pay attention. And we were surprised by how many amazing startup investment opportunities we found. Like since we came here, half of our investments have been in Greek startups and half around the world, places we've lived before through our international network. And I think it's not despite the financial crisis the country experienced. It's maybe just as much because of that. Like hard times create strong people create great startups. Like the country, the people here are so much more willing to try out new things, reform itself, find new ways, and honestly, some of the hardest working people I've ever met right here in Greece. The growth is phenomenal. I would argue the Greek ecosystem is one of the fastest growing in Europe. It's not the biggest. It started from very small, but it's the fastest growing. Like one example is, I think in 2022, when the worldwide market was going down really quickly, Greece, I think, was the only city in Europe that saw more money invested in its startup scene than the year prior. Like if you look at countries like Portugal, Lisbon, or Stockholm, saw a 70-80% drop in money invested. But here, the natural growth of the ecosystem was actually faster than the worldwide decline in the market. And I feel it myself, more and more opportunities coming our way. It's difficult to quantize, but more and more things are coming our way, broader and broader subject matters. So I have a software background. I'm a computer scientist, but we've invested in biotech, in medical tech, in real estate technology. It's such an exciting time for the country, and I'm thrilled to be here. It's probably one of the best decisions my wife and I ever made. I think after making our little daughter, moving to Greece, best decision ever. Your typical angel is someone who has had some success, made enough money that they can invest in young startups. And you get to really capture this super early stage where advice, opening up networks is just as important as the check you cut. And from my own experience, when I started my startup more than 20 years ago now, in California half and in Sydney half, right, it was this one person, Frank, who was the angel that opened all the doors to us, including eventually introducing us to the Google founders. We sold the startup to Google. And I've seen this over and over and over, that in particular young unknown entrepreneurs that have the hunger, that have the skills, but they don't have the experience, they don't have the network. They may even be, like my own best investment was a young couple from Perth, mining town in Western Australia. They built Canva, a $25 billion company down in Australia. They got 100 no's from VCs because it was such an unlikely story. But there was this one angel, wasn't me, but a good friend of mine, Bill, this one angel that said, look, I'll help you. And then he opened up the doors to a bunch of people, including myself. Finally, around came together, and now it's this incredible success. So it's a very young ecosystem. It's growing really quickly. And just like a startup in the early stages, that's where I enjoy working. That's where I think I have some skills that are useful. It's the same with an ecosystem that's so early on. You see a different kind of hunger here, a different kind of willingness to work hard, be scrappy, trade cash salary for equity in a promising startup. And it's just like the whole country is in the same exciting state as a young startup. Now, you don't get the Silicon Valley, someone has a great idea in artificial intelligence and they raise $150 million on a slide deck. Those kinds of startups will not happen here. But the kind of startups that I was talking about before, the Canva, a young couple from a small town with this crazy idea that no one believes in, that now becomes a generationally important, industry-leading, crazy, successful company. Those are the kind of things I see starting to happen in Greece. So it's the things that attract us. So we have the freedom, we're angel investors. I invest with my Greek goddess wife, and we look for missions that are important in the world. Sometimes it's personal. I actually had a personal relationship with graphics design. I think that was a big part of why my mapping startup was important. So we look for missions that are important. We look for solutions that seem viable. But the most important thing, and this is always the case, is the founding team that makes the difference. Not just do they have the skills and experiences that are relevant, that's important, but do they have that crazy, hungry spirit, won't give up, tenacity, superhuman. It's hard to put your finger on, but I think in a sense you're more likely to find people like that in a place like Greece that's just come through this devastating crisis, where you can't just like straight out of school go and get a $500,000 salary at a big tech company. That's where you're more likely to find people like that. And there's also, there's a lot of people coming back who may have left when things were really bad here. They went, learned a bunch of stuff outside. All of those skills are coming back. Now you marry those two things together, it's an explosive mix. Well, yes, very much so. So in the good example of this myself, I did not obviously come back to Greece, but my wife did. And I think we started, and this has happened really quickly too, right? 10 years ago, at the midst of the crisis, locals, young people were looking for a way out. Right? But now those people are starting to come back, but also people who may have left earlier, even a generation ago, are starting to see that Athens is on fire. It's, the next big place in Europe is very likely Athens. We're starting to see foreigners like myself that has some connection to Greece. In my case, I'm married to a Greek, coming here, finding that this is the most exciting place to work in tech, in startups, in innovation. And I think very soon Greece is going to hit this magic mark where foreign talent that have no connection to Greece are also going to start coming here at scale. People are going to start moving at startups here. They're going to recognize that this is the right place, both in terms of all the things we just talked about, but it also has one of the most magic lifestyles in the world. And we've all learned through the pandemic, we've gotten much better at working in a more nomadic, spread out, flexible scenario. And so here, you can sit and work with a view of the Parthenon, or you can go and work on an island, but with the same intensity that we've all learned it's necessary to make startups succeed, but in this insanely amazing country. Yes, hugely so. So I'm Danish. This wasn't an issue for me, but I've tried working with people from American, Asia, and so on. And before this happened, that was a material barrier. And I think Endeavor did a fantastic job working with the government, making these visas happen. I think it's going to make a huge difference, exactly when it comes to attracting the foreign talent who are eager to look for a better lifestyle and a more vibrant, dynamic, young, growing ecosystem to do their work in. So a lot of these things feed on themselves. What's still missing here is the really big success story. They're starting to happen. Blueground, one of Endeavor's portfolio companies, of course, Viva Wallet and FlexCar is getting there. Lots of companies are starting to hit that unicorn level. When we get even one step further, when generationally important companies, industry-leading companies are starting to emerge here, like think what Spotify did for Stockholm, what Atlassian or Canva did for Sydney, Australia. Just the stories themselves are so inspiring, but it also does create a lot of, angels, for example, right? A lot of the early people in those startups will then leave and become the angels or the next founders that starts the next round of companies. I think foreign investors are going to start paying more and more attention to the countries. It's not one particular thing that's needed. It's just more and more of the same. I think the government here is working on a physical campus where all the startups can hang out together with maybe some of the big companies. OP, I hope that happens. Let me look. You can probably tell I'm very excited to be here. And yes. So I've invested in a bunch. My most recent investments were actually a little bit outside my field of expertise. I invested in a company called Fastprint that's building a 3D printer that prints with human tissue, so it can help repair organs. They're working on a treatment for bladder cancer, where they literally create you a new bladder by combining muscle tissue from your intestine with a 3D printed lining from your own cells. It's science fiction becoming real. It's crazy. It's a university spin out from NTUA. Before that, I invested in a biotech company. Greece is surprisingly to me, strong in biotech. And there is a research institute called the Fleming Institute that has spun out a startup chasing a cure for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, like some of the biggest, most important diseases. And they're making fantastic progress. It's a real moonshot, but I'm super excited to be part of it. And to be honest, as an investor, those kinds of companies I would not get access to in a more developed ecosystem. But because it's such a young ecosystem and there's still maybe a lack of angels here, I suddenly get to hang out with people like that, which is phenomenal. We've also done a bunch of software investments. So the real estate market here is on fire, but there is also a lot of need for renovations, for energy efficiency improvement. And so we invested in a company, Proteo, I think also an Endeavor scale-up that is building a platform that helps people renovate their apartments at scale. These are just a few examples. I think we have about 10 Greek startups in our portfolio now. I do not speak Greek yet, but I work with my wife. She is a Greek native speaker, so that helps. So I do think the visa was an issue until recently, not for me, because I'm a European citizen. I think it's a great advantage to be a foreigner right here, right now, because you have the skill set to bring, you have an international network that's attractive to the startup founders. There's also a fantastic set of tax incentives for both for Greeks that are coming back, but also for foreigners that are setting up shop here the first time around. And all of this, I should say, was surprising to me. I think if there's anything I can do is help Greek tell the world about this, because I didn't know this. We came here, for the lifestyle during the pandemic. Things were a little crazy in America where we lived. And then we were just blown away with how quickly the startup ecosystem has grown in just the 8 years we've been gone. So I think it'll be somewhere between where Lisbon, Stockholm, Sydney are right now. So these are the cities that we look to for inspiration. And so in particular, there will be one or two startups that are not just like successful, unicorn, fantastic businesses, but that are generationally important, that are industry leading or industry disrupting at scale and with a worldwide focus. So the top startups in the country right now are incredible businesses, but they're somewhat regional in their attention. And I start seeing people work with the global ambition, which is what really excites me. We'll also start seeing people having proper exits, and so the financial returns from the early crop of startups will start being reinvested at a whole different scale at the bottom of the funnel, or is at the top? I forget. You know what I mean?